Here we are back again with another episode of the Beyond the Box podcast. And it is my absolute pleasure today to be having a conversation with Jack Elzinga with Landis. So welcome, Jack.
Thank you. And thank you, Lynette, so much for having me. Excited to be here and to talk more about Landis and what we're doing in real estate.
Love it. So interestingly, again, the Beyond the Box podcast really focused on solutions, conversations at the intersection of real estate, technology, and capital. And you guys have a really great story around sort of all of those things. I feel like you sit right at that intersection. So Jack, kick us off with a little bit of a little bit of background on you. Who are you? Who's Jack and what's his background story? And then a little bit about Landis.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I'll start with, a bit of background on me. So I joined Landis, I guess 4 months ago now. I was just telling someone this morning, it feels like it's been 4 days and also 4 years. So it's one of those whirlwind stories where, double the size from the time I joined just a few months ago. So my background is that I actually just graduated from business school in June, and I was at Stanford for the last 2 years. And then before that was working in management consulting at BCG and then also at Google. So I've kind of been seen a bunch of different industries, but I've always been passionate about real estate. One of my first jobs ever was working in real estate debt investing. So kind of fell into the industry that way. Yeah, I thought I wanted to be like an architect or a home builder when I was a kid. I used to draw floor plans of houses. And so it's always been a passion of mine. So I finally got to really explore that in business school, both through internships and kind of working for a developer on the side. And now I'm here at Landis.
Very cool. Well, I'm so excited to hear how you landed at Landis and what drew you to Landis. And let's start with who they are and then connect that dot. How does that sound?
Yeah, for sure. So Landis is at its core, we're a homeownership program. And what that means is we work with clients, with Americans who want to buy a house, but for whatever reason can't do so, whether it's a low credit score or not enough savings for a down payment or a recent bankruptcy. Those are some of the more common ones we see. And we'll actually buy a house for this person. And so when you're a client, you work with us, we work with you, we work with your agent, and we'll give you a budget. You go out with your agent, you pick the house you want to buy, and then we'll buy it for you. And over a 12-month period, we will rent that house back to you, and we'll coach you to improve your credit and save for that down payment so that 12 months later, you buy that house back from us and you're a homeowner.
Very, very cool. So tell me a little bit then about what drew you based on your wide array of previous experience to Landis, and what appealed to you, and how the journey's been for the last 4 months.
Yeah, for sure. So I was connected to Landis actually through Stanford. So Cyril and Tom, our co-founders, graduated from Stanford Business School, I guess 4 or 5 years ago. And so through a friend, heard about them, and I'd kind of been exploring different parts of prop tech, different real estate companies. And what really drew me to Landis was a couple of things. I think one, the mission is so strong because there's such a need that we see, and we're really stepping in and helping a lot of people who don't necessarily have a lot of other options. And so that's been really exciting, and it drew me at the beginning and continues to excite me today. I think also I'm particularly interested in real estate from the residential side. And so being at a company that's not only just involved in residential real estate, but actually buying residential real estate was super exciting to me. I had this unique opportunity where I mentioned I was in management consulting before business school, and I'm going back to my job in management consulting in January. And so I kind of had this like 6-month gap. And so I got connected to Cyril and Tom, and it was this amazing opportunity to come work for a really exciting startup in the space. So I'm unfortunately actually leaving Landis in just a few short weeks here. It's coming up on the end, but It's been amazing. And what a cool phase to go through from kind of just after the Series A to really, doubling in size and continuing to grow.
So I love that. I love that story that you get to be a part of it, even for a brief period of time, kind of at this foundational stage of the company. And so tell us a little bit about, kind of that mission behind Landis. What was sort of occurring in the marketplace that sort of drove the conceptualization of the company, and what continues to drive the mission forward? And I know, you just mentioned the Series A. Some pretty, a bit of excitement around the Series A in terms of who participated. And so, leave that part of the story out for us a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll say a couple things about the Series A. I mean, the Series A, we're very thankful and we're very excited with how it actually went, and got some really top tier investors. But it's funny because when we talk to the real estate agents and the clients who work with Landis, like, they care a little bit about Sequoia, but they care a lot about Will Smith and Jay-Z having invested. That's definitely the fun one for us. And we love talking about that. In terms of the mission, so I mean, the core statistic that's really been driving us is somewhere between 30 and 35 million American households want to buy a home but can't. And that's a huge number. And it's a massive market all across the country, in every state and every city. And so we see that, and our company started by our co-founders wondering, what can we do about that? And how can we actually set up a company that not only helps these renters who want to become homeowners actually get there, but do it in a way that really will create a sustainable business. Mm-hmm. And so that was the kind of the core of our company. And I think one of the more exciting things that we've been able to do is really figure out, how can we have a company that incentivizes everybody in the same way and aligns everybody's success together? So our company succeeds when our clients succeed, when our agent partners succeed. And that's really important to us. And so at the end of the day, what we want to do is sell homes to Americans who want to become home buyers. And we're able to do that all the time. And it's really exciting.
Very cool. So for the benefit of everybody that's listening, Jack, walk me through a little bit of that experience. So I'm a home buyer who has struggled in this environment where it's, home prices are increasing. So I call it the income affordability gap, just continues to widen, right? So, have been doing everything that I can, have climbing the income earning ladder, but not keeping pace with the amount that I'm required to, have for a down payment, ability to service a mortgage, ability to cover closing costs. So what does that experience look like for me if I were in that position? How would I find you? How would I find Landis? And then what's the process I would go through?
Yeah, great question. There's so much wrapped up in that. So I'll just kind of talk through the whole process, really. And I think you hit on one of the core drivers for us is this income affordability gap. It's, even if your salary, your wages are going up, I mean, we're operating in cities where the average home price has gone up 25% in a year. And it's completely nuts, especially during kind of the tail end of COVID here. So let's say you're someone, you live in Atlanta, Georgia, and you want to buy a home, but either that you don't qualify or you're not sure. One of the first people you're going to go to is a real estate agent. You're going to find an agent in the area. Maybe you have a friend who's an agent, and they'll ask you some qualifying questions. They'll help you understand kind of where you line up. And oftentimes you realize, well, my credit score is a little low. I've got some student loans that are really holding me back. Or maybe you had a bankruptcy a couple of years ago that it's close to being fully gone from your history, but it's not yet. Those are a lot of the situations that we see. And so in that scenario, that real estate agent would recommend Landis. And so our whole business works through partnerships with agents and with brokerages all around the country. So you work with Landis, you work with your agent, and what you can then do is you apply kind of how you might apply for a typical loan, but we'll pre-qualify you for a budget based on what we think you'll be able to get a loan for in a couple of years after our coaching. So we think in 12 months, in 18 months, you can qualify for a $250,000 home based on where we think your credit can get to, just based on how many people we've seen go through the process. And so a lender saying you can't buy anything, but Landis is saying, yeah, you can have a $250,000 home right now, and we're going to coach you so you can actually have the credit to buy it. So you'll apply, you'll get approved, and then you and your agent will go out touring as normal. You'll go look at homes, maybe a Saturday or Sunday, and you'll pick the one that you want to buy. You give us a call and we'll put an offer on it. And we'll actually go through the entire process. We'll purchase the house, and then you'll move in. And you'll be the future homeowner living in that home for the next anywhere between 12 and 24 months. You'll rent that house from us, but every month, part of that payment to us is actually going into a down payment savings fund. And so at the end of your rental period, you have enough in that down payment savings fund to pay for the starter down payment to a traditional mortgage. All the while, you're actually working with our credit coaching team. So they're helping you make decisions like, oh, should I get this new credit card? Or what should I be doing to really improve my credit on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis? And so at the end of that time, your credit's gone up. We're seeing clients raise their credit score on average 60 points over a year. And your savings has gone up, and you actually have what you need to get that mortgage. And then you purchase the home from us.
Love it. Love it. So if I note a particular home that I'm interested in purchasing, is there any process that I need to go through for Landis to approve it as, a home that they would be willing to back me? I mean, I'm assuming that I can't roll out. It has to obviously be within my affordability range, but are there any other criteria that you go through to kind of evaluate the home fit in terms of the model?
Yeah, it's a great question. You're asking me all the questions that agents ask when we do sales calls.
Of course.
So I love it. But no, these are the exact right questions. Yes, there are. And the reason for it is that we want to set up the buyer, the future home buyer, to have a really good house that we know they're going to be successful in. And so what that means is we want a house that's move-in ready, something that doesn't have, nothing with a leaky roof or a broken HVAC. And we want it to be either built more recently, usually we say after 1960, or having been renovated.
Got it.
Those are the two big ones. There's some other smaller ones, but primarily the guiding principle for us is we want this house to be something that the buyer can move into on day one and live in. We don't want it to be a fixer-upper. We don't want it to be something where everything is going to break and it's going to cost a lot of money, because we know it's tough and it's a hard transition from renting to owning, and we want to make our future home buyer as successful as possible in that transition.
I love that. So the other component that I'm really interested in, because as a mom who has, a couple of kids that are one just moving into kind of this next phase of their life in terms of, acquiring real estate and potentially, settling down, to an 11-year-old who is just learning the value of managing money and finances. It's kind of daunting. And I think a lot of people come to the table with the notions around money, whether they're good or bad, that they've kind of grown up with. And there's not really, I would argue in sort of mainstream education, there isn't a lot of support in terms of even understanding how to build good credit, what that means, how to save, how to allocate. And so I'm really curious around that aspect of the business that you deliver to your clientele when you're working with them to save for that down payment. What are some of the things that you're like, what are some of the trends you're seeing? What are some of the, sort of most common circumstances you're seeing in terms of how people come into that process, and then kind of how they offload from that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. And thank you for asking it, because this is one of the parts of our business that we're most excited about. It sounds like it's similar in Canada, but in the US, there's little to no financial life education as
Not
part
really.
of, high school and college curriculums. My high school was offering pre-calculus and calculus, but no, here's how you buy a house. And it's that second piece that everyone is going to need to know it at some point. Like, 2/3 of people in the US are homeowners, or want to become homeowners. And then nobody knows how to do that. And so we actually, we have seen enough people go through the homeownership process, and that we actually know we can tell you, here's what it's going to take. Because buying a house, it's, maybe it seems straightforward, but it's not. There's a lot of things you need to know. the credit system is really complicated, and it's not necessarily easy, especially as if you are like many of our clients, you come from a lower middle income background where you haven't necessarily seen your parents be able to buy a home. And so it's a really tough situation that we feel that we can actually help with by having a credit coaching team. And we do a couple things. So we have the technology solution. We have a credit coaching app that actually lets people, you put in your information and it tracks you and it tells you, hey, here's 3 things you can do right now to improve your credit score. And anyone, it's actually free. You don't need to be using our program at all to do it. Anyone can do that. But then there's the personalized part for people actually going through the Landis Homeownership program. You'll have access to a member of our credit coaching team, and you can call them, you can ask questions, have a conversation about like, okay, here's, I got an offer to get this new credit card. What will that do to my credit? Or, oh, I think I might miss my student loan payment this month. Is there anything I can do about that won't make my credit drop so drastically? And it's just little things like that people don't even always know. Like I don't even always know. And so just having actual experts who, a number of people on our credit team they came from the mortgage loan officer space. So they know the details and they know what it takes. And we're really excited to be able to share that with our clients.
Very cool. I love that. And again, I think that's one of the most critical components in helping people get onto that home ownership ladder is teaching them, giving them the tools to be able to maintain that long term, right? So kudos to you guys. On that journey, what are some of the most interesting things you're learning about your clientele? Whether it be, from a demographic point of view or from sort of a mindset point of view, have you sort of gleaned any interesting learnings yet?
For sure. I think it's a really important lesson for us to remember that oftentimes the people that we're helping are different from us. And, our company we're made up of people kind of from a number of different backgrounds, but, living in New York or living in Chicago where I live, it can be a different environment than somebody living in Atlanta or Birmingham or Charlotte, where we're actually conducting much of our business. And so I think one of the things that's been really helpful for us is actually expanding into different geographies with people on the ground. Real estate agents in Georgia or Alabama are far more interested in talking to an account representative who lives in Georgia or Alabama, who actually can speak to and understand the market. And so that's been really great for us to feel like I think we're better serving those communities by having somebody who's actually there and who's really part of the community. But also it allows us to kind of build and gain trust with realtors and with clients. I think one example of this that comes to mind is when we developed our coaching app, we actually developed it first for iPhone. And that worked great at Landis, where we have a lot of iPhone users, but actually our clients are much more split. We actually have a lot of iPhone and a lot of Android users as well. And so we now have an Android app, which we're very excited about, but it was a gap for us. And it was something that, okay, we need to make sure we actually have this ASAP.
Very cool. And so, and that's super interesting because, there's the demographic differences, but then, to your point, it's, sort of how that demographic also interacts in the same ways, albeit sometimes just in through different mechanisms and through different vehicles. So very cool. So I can't help but think that the business model is pretty dependent on market conditions. And so you've identified a number of markets that you guys are operating in. So Atlanta, Birmingham, and several others. What are the key market trends that are indicators for you in terms of, the relative success of the business, whether it's the real estate market or other maybe sociopolitical, kind of factors that go on that you need to keep your eye on from a trend point of view, and how do you guys align your business to those trends?
For sure, and it's an interesting point that you've pointed out as to where we operate, but also where we don't operate. So we're in 12 states right now, and probably about 50 cities. But some of the places that we're not are New York, California, Chicago, like the bigger cities in the US. We actually haven't been in most of them yet.
Okay.
And so
And
there's
is there a rationale?
so there's
I mean,
a
I
couple.
can guess, but I'd
Yeah.
love to hear from you.
There's a couple things going into that. We started actually by testing certain cities, and we didn't necessarily know what was going to be the most successful versus not at the beginning. But we found Charlotte was one of our biggest early markets, and we found that there was a lot of need and a lot of opportunity in Charlotte, and so we kept growing there, and it just ended up working really well. And from there, we expanded to other cities in North Carolina. We expanded into South Carolina, and then ultimately kind of throughout the Southeast. Similar in Ohio, we actually have an account representative that was supposed to start in Charlotte, but actually had to move to Columbus. And so we started working in Columbus because we had somebody great there. And it's ended up being a really strong market for us where, again, there's a lot of need. There's a lot of inventory that kind of fits into our price range as well. And that kind of leads into number two, which is we buy houses between $110,000 and $400,000. And so in mid-sized US cities, there's a lot of inventory that can work really well with that. In New York and in San Francisco and in LA, that's much harder. And so I think there's a world in the future where we kind of expand that price range and we move into some of those markets. But right now we're finding so much growth kind of in mid-sized US cities that at least for now, that's where we're continuing to grow. So we just launched in Florida. We're kind of looking at Kansas City, and we're excited to keep moving.
Amazing. So if you think about kind of the major factors in, those kind of what we call, I guess, middle markets, right? Where they're not the highest price, they're not the lowest price, but they're kind of those mid-range markets. What will be the biggest factors that determine, relative success in any market that you choose to enter or markets that you're currently in?
For sure. And there's a couple things. I think the biggest thing that we've seen over the last 12 months has been price appreciation. And so it's been honestly, it's a good factor to some extent, but it's gotten to the point where it's made it really difficult for anybody to buy a house. And so, you look at these cities that are growing 20, 25% a year in price. It's absolutely crazy. It's been, excuse me. To some extent, it's nice because there is kind of that appreciation that our clients can then actually get when they purchase the home. But it means that every offer is quite competitive. And so we have some kind of restrictions in what we're able to do on offers. So we can't waive the inspection, for example, which there's other companies that can. And in a place like Charlotte, it's been happening more and more. And that doesn't work for us because for the same reason I mentioned before, we don't want to buy a home that isn't move-in ready and that has something undiagnosed wrong with it. One thing that's nice about our business model for our clients. So when we sell the house back to them, we sell at 3% more than it appraised for when we bought it. So 12 months, 3% appreciation. That's a big deal in a lot of these markets right now, because if prices are going up by 25% in Atlanta and you can buy a house for 3% more than it was worth last year, that's a huge savings.
Oh, totally. Very cool.
So, and it's allowed people to plan. It means that you can actually, upfront what your purchase price is going to be, and we're not going to change that. And that means that you can plan for it, you can save for it. And if you think you can buy a house right now, in 12 months from now, as long as you follow the plan, you're going to be able to buy a house. And that's been really exciting to see.
That's super exciting. I mean, I would love that opportunity to lock in my home price today and pay for it next year for 3%. I mean,
sure.
When are you guys coming to Canada? When are you coming to Canada, Jack?
Oh man.
Awesome.
I can only imagine the fun of navigating a whole new credit system, although who knows, maybe yours works better than ours.
I don't know. No promises. I can hook you up with a few people to figure that out though. Awesome. So just one last question. And then, before we wrap here, this is really exciting. And I think, again, because of the trend that we've had in the real estate market in terms of, the income affordability gap and, just how hot the market has been kind of right across North America, particularly during, 2020 and, even into 21, the solution is so needed. And I think, even from a long-term perspective, it's likely always been needed, but even more so kind of now. So as you think about how the company continues to evolve. What are you in particular? And I know that you're only around for the next couple of months, but I can see your passion and how passionate you are for the mission of Landis. What are you most optimistic about? And, what do you think, what do you or the company have your eye on in for the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's almost hard to answer because there's so much. And I think it's the fun of being at a company that's this size and this scale, is that, every day, every week, there's something new that we're trying. And that's really exciting. But I think the biggest thing that I think about, especially kind of being more on the business development side, is we feel really lucky that we feel like we're onto something with both the value proposition for our clients, but also for our agent partners. And especially we spend a lot of time pitching in real estate offices, in brokers' offices, and doing lunch and learns with groups of 30, 40 agents. And that works really well for us. And when we come in, we talk about what we do, people get excited. And that's amazing. And it brings us energy, it brings the company energy. And so the biggest thing for the next, call it 6-12 months, is let's just do more of that. There's more markets we can go into. There's more brokers' offices that we can talk to. And so it's really how can we scale this to be in all 50 states?
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Jack, I'm so glad that we teed this conversation up. I've been wanting to not just learn a little bit more about what you guys are up to, but share it with our listeners and our watchers as well. Because again, I think these are the unique types of solutions that are solving real challenges out there. And partnering with the industry is always so important in the context of, being able to connect the dots of where consumers see the resource, but with these really unique solutions that help them achieve home ownership. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being, so passionate about the Landis mission. Is there anything else you'd like to share that we maybe never had a chance to touch on?
No, I think you asked great questions. Thank you again so much for having me. I'm always happy to talk about Landis and our mission, and hopefully we can help more people become homeowners as soon as possible.
Love it. And so if folks are interested to learn more, if they're interested to know if Landis is in their particular city, how would you recommend they reach out and get in touch?
For sure. So the best way to get in touch with us is just email partners@landis.com. We have a whole team that monitors that more or less all the time, and we'd be very happy to talk to any of you. We'd love to.
All right.
We're growing
Amazing.
in new cities and markets every week.
Perfect. Thank you. And we'll include that information in the show notes or in the chat when the episode airs. So thank you again so much, Jack. Very best to you as you move back into your previous role. It'll be different not seeing you out there now that we're back to live events, but hopefully our paths will cross again sometime soon.
I'm sure. No, thank you so much. And I will definitely miss you guys and the Landis team. It's been a wild ride, and looking forward to more.
Awesome. All right. Thanks again. Take good care.
Thanks.